All right, welcome everyone to Business Sales Consulting Firm. Tonight we have our monthly um, webinar with the IRS. Thank you, Nikki, for joining us again tonight.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. So I was welcoming everyone to the webinar, and I'm glad to have Nikki here again tonight. She's going to talk about the identity protection, IP PIN tonight. I know we initially planned to talk about some programs that the IRS has for graduates and internship for youth, but because of all the changes going on and all the dynamics, we just thought it would be better to postpone that topic and talk about it a little later when we know for sure what's going on with hiring. So tonight we're just going to talk about identity protection, the IP pin. You can take it from here.
Great. Thanks, Deborah. Well, good evening, everybody. First, I'm going to start off with a story. I had traveled to a different state and had arrived at a hotel earlier than I should have, and I couldn't check in. And so the lady at the front counter, she recommended a restaurant that was close by. So I walk over there, place my order, and since I was by myself, I started eavesdropping on other people's conversations. And there were two women sitting in the booth right ahead of me. And at one point, one of the ladies asked the other, "So how's your son?" And she says, "Well, he's still straightening out um, getting his identity back. It was stolen. He got his tax refund stolen, and he's still trying to get all of that straightened out, and he's not quite sure what to do." And it took everything within me not to jump over the table and say, "Hey, I have an answer for you." So tonight I'm going to go over that with you, what I probably should have told the ladies, but they probably would have been freaked out had I done that. And hopefully you won't have to go through what one of these ladies' sons went through. So identity protection pin, it is a program that the IRS offers. It's a number that's going to prevent others from using your social security number or ITIN number. So let's go on to the next slide. It's a 6-digit number to be specific. It changes every year. And you get it from the IRS if you enroll in this program. And it helps you to verify with the IRS whether you're really you. You can do it for electronic or paper returns. Even if you don't have a filing requirement, like if you want to protect your children, or if you don't make enough money yet to file your taxes, an IP PIN is still going to protect your social security number or ITIN from being used to file a fraudulent tax return with the IRS if you're enrolled. So if somebody does try to file a tax return electronically with your identification number, it's automatically going to reject. If they try to file a paper return without an IP PIN, IRS, we're going to contact you and we're going to find out if it's real or not. And if it's not, we're going to follow up, reject that tax return, and then try to catch that identity thief. So there are two ways that people get enrolled in the program, either voluntarily or automatic. Voluntary enrollment is if you don't already have an IPPN, you can get it and initiate that with the Social Security. I mean, with us here with the IRS, and this includes individuals living abroad if they are making income from the United States. On the other hand, if you are a victim of a confirmed victim of tax-related identity theft, and IRS has resolved your tax account issues, we'll mail you a notice, a CP01A notice with your new IP PIN each year. And so that's the difference between voluntary and automatic. I will tell you, if you're a victim, you don't have to wait for the IRS to enroll you after we have resolved your tax account issues. You can go in and voluntarily enroll anyway. So if you want to get an IP PIN voluntarily, there is 3 ways that you can get that: online, by paper with an IRS form 15227, or in person with an appointment at one of our taxpayer assistance offices. So with the online option, you get your IP PIN immediately. You will have to sign up for something called ID Me if you are not already signed up for that, and do that first. If you cannot do the online option, then the paper option is the next best thing. However, there are certain limitations, such as you can only use this option if you fall within a certain income range. It also takes longer to process, and you have to have a telephone number in your name that the IRS can call you back to verify that you're you. So if you're unable to verify your identity online or with the paper option, with the form 15227, or you are or you just want to have a different option, you can make an appointment, as I mentioned earlier, for an in-person meeting at a local taxpayer assistance center. So I'm going to explain this option here more in 3 slides as I break down each option even more. So starting with the online option, if you, I just want to make sure I was on the right slide. If you misplace your IP PIN, you can easily go back online and get it, unlike if you get your IP PIN by a letter each year. The application, it's easy to find. You go to irs.gov. In the search box, you're going to enter IP PIN, either with a space in between the P's or without. And the page with the online application button will come up after you click on the first link. You can apply online anytime between mid-January through mid-November. In other words, you can sign up for it right now if you want, or try to sign up for it now. If you already have something that's called an IRS online account with the IRS, you should already have access to this. If you haven't accessed the IRS IP PIN application through the IRS online account before, for the first time, you might have to answer a couple of authentication questions just so that we know you're you. Also, you will have to apply, like I mentioned earlier, for an ID Me account if you are not accessing the IP PIN application through your IRS online account. So breaking down the paper option, if your adjusted gross income on your last filed tax return is below $84,000 as an individual, or $168,000 for a married filing joint tax return, you can establish and you cannot establish an online account. You have the option to use that form 15227, which is application for an identity personal protection identification number. So what you're going to need is a valid social security number or individual tax identification number, better known as an ITIN, and your adjusted gross income on your last filed tax return. You need to double check if you're anything other than married filing joint status on that tax return. It has to be below 84,000. And if you are married filing joint, it has to be below 168,000. And again, you have to have access to a telephone. So we will use the telephone number that you provide on the form 15227 to call you and to validate your identity. Once we verify your identity, then you're going to receive that IP PIN in the mail, usually within 4 to 6 weeks. And then you're going to receive your IP PIN every year through the mail after that. So let's go on to the in-person meeting option. So if you're unable to verify your entity online or with the form 15227 process, or you're ineligible to file the form 15227, this is the other option that you have. It's for an in-person meeting at a local taxpayer assistance center. We ask that you bring one current government issued picture ID and another identification document to prove your identity. And once we verify your identity, you will receive that IP PIN in the mail, usually within 3 weeks. And then you'll receive your IP PIN again every year through the mail after that. So how and when do you get your IP PIN? The answer is it depends. IRS comes up with the new IP PIN numbers in December. If you get your IP PIN by mail, you can expect to receive it anytime between mid-December to mid-January. And you can expect a letter instead of seeing it online if you applied by paper. In person, or if you were an identity theft victim and did not enroll after January 2019, and if you enrolled online before January 2019. If you enrolled online after January 2019, you will not get a letter and will have to go into the what we call get an IP PIN application to get your number, which you should be able to access between January to mid-November. Just a side note, a lot of us don't notify the IRS when we move until we file that next tax return. If you're enrolled in this program, you're going to want to let the IRS know immediately so that if we're mailing you that letter, we mail it to the correct address. You would just call that 1-800-829-1040 number. You can either call in a change of address or you can mail in that form 8822 for the change of address as well. The reason is if the service researches and we cannot validate your address, we are not going to mail out your letter. And you will not know if there's a problem until you try to file your tax return and it is rejected. So always a good idea to just let us know what your address is when you move. So how do you use this number with the IRS? Where you're going to enter the 6-digit IP PIN if you're using software when you're prompted, or if you're using a tax professional, you'll provide it to your trusted tax professional who's preparing your tax return. The IP pin is only used on the Form 1040 series. So that includes the Form 1040, 1040X, which is for amended returns, 1040NR for non-resident, 1040PR for Puerto Rico, and 1040SR for seniors. And correct IP pins, they have to be entered electronically, and paper returns, you're going to want to write that on your paper returns to avoid any rejections or delays. Let's see. For electronic tax returns, if you have dependents, you do not have to enter their IP pins, but you do have to enter the spouses. It's better if you enter the dependents' IP pins if you have them. If you're filing by paper, you just need to write both spouses' IP pins on the tax return near the field next to the signatures, and you do not need to write down the dependents' IP pins for paper returns. So what do you do if you don't get or you lose your IP pin letter? Actually, I've done that. The easiest way is to go to what's called Get an IP Pin. That's an application on IRS.gov, and then you can get the number immediately. The other way is by calling us at our special number at 800-908-4490. You will have to use this method if you are trying to get an IP pin for your dependents. If you call this number, you will not get the number over the phone. Rather, it means you might have to wait 21 days to get it through the mail. And if this means that you're not going to be able to file your tax return electronically by April 15th with it, then we suggest that you mail a paper return without the IP pin, and then we will contact you to authenticate that it's your return later. So to highlight some of what I said earlier, you, your spouse, and your dependents all want an IP pin to protect your Social Security or individual tax identification number from being used by a fraudster. Every calendar year, you will get a new IP pin to use to file any current or prior year returns filed during that calendar year. Other than your tax preparer, you never want to share your IP pin with anybody. There are IRS impersonators that will try to call or text you for this number, so you want to be aware of IRS impersonators. When calling the IRS or visiting an IRS office, your IP PIN is not accepted as proof of your identity. Also, you want to, let's see, if an email or text looks suspicious, then just pick up the phone. Whether they're trying to impersonate the IRS or if it looks like it's suspicious and it looks like they're trying to impersonate your tax preparer, just go ahead and pick up the phone and make sure it's really who they say they are. If you get an IRS impersonation email, we want to know about it. We want you to forward that email to phishing with a PH at irs.gov as an attachment. If you get an IRS impersonation text, we want you to report it to 7726. And I'm going to give you a link to our Report Phishing and Online Scams page here in a couple slides for you to save as a favorite. So moving on to the other reminders, if you cannot enroll online, there's two other options of enrolling by paper or in person. And if you move proactively, you want to make sure that you either call us or you send that IRS form 8822 for your change of address. Okay, so there's a a couple of issues that common issues that IRS sees with people using IP pins. Either they're not entering or writing the IP pin on their tax return, and also sometimes they're trying to use a previous calendar year's IP pin. So if you try to do any of these electronically, your return is automatically going to reject. All right, so here's some pages from irs.gov that I mentioned earlier, and you might want to save. The Get an Identity Protection Pin page covers anything about the IP pin program, and it has a button for you to apply online if that's how you're going to apply. The Online Account for Individuals page covers anything about that program where you can access your individual account information, including your balance, your payments, your tax records, tax professional authorizations, and more, including the IP PIN. If you want to apply for this more inclusive application, that page has the button for you to apply for it as well. And then finally, for when you or somebody you know gets an IRS or Treasury related phishing contact by phone, email, text, social media, or by paper, you will want to save the report phishing page on irs.gov. Okay, and new for this year is the option to opt out of the program if you enrolled in the program voluntarily and you were not a tax ID theft victim. If you change your mind after you've opted out, you can opt back in after 72 hours. Here's my contact information. Deborah, do you see any questions?
Um, I do not see any questions right now.
Okay.
Um,
Well, that's my contact information. And thank you everybody for your time. And I will, once IRS starts hiring again, offer to talk about how to apply for the jobs, not only with the IRS, but federal government in general. So Deborah, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and thank you everyone for joining tonight. I hope that information was helpful to you. And just in case I missed your question, you can always reach out to Nikki, and that's her email address as well as her phone number, and ask any follow-up questions that may come up. And also, you can watch the replay on YouTube when you have time. Thank you so much for joining once again. And thank you, Nikki, for taking your time to educate us on the IP pin. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank